Alrighty, we are back on 7600 today. Changing the oil for the third time because the dang needle valve leaks gas down into the cylinder and dilutes the oil. And I forget to set the gas tank back down. So I got the carburetor part, I got a carb kit for it. Parts are cleaning up over there in the little ultrasonic cleaner. I don't know if the needle valve just leaked or if it wasn't adjusted, the float wasn't adjusted right or what, but turning that thing up. I wish it just had a constant on button where it just sit there and cook for 2 hours and I walk away from it. Yeah, getting pretty warm, which is good. Now onto the heads. These are the heads that were on it. They're pretty bad shape. They've been the exhaust manifold here. They've gone in here and welded it up and filed it down because it probably started leaking on the gasket and just started leaking exhaust out and ate away at the casting. These things just run too hot for too long. They were gonna had an assortment of valve springs in it, so I needed new valve springs. The seats were both shot. It was gonna have to be cut and have new seats put in it. New valve guides. It was gonna need all that crap. It was bad shape on both heads. These outer ports on all the head and both of them run into the coolant passage, and they got a stud that goes in there with sealant on it. And I was losing coolant somewhere, and I couldn't figure out where. One place my heater core in the cab leaks, which I'm probably just going to bypass the heater core because it gets hot enough in the cab. You really don't need a heater unless it's about 30 degrees outside. And I probably won't be using it if it's 30 degrees outside because we're probably going to be trying to get other stuff done as fast as we can. But another place I think it was leaking around because these have been helicoiled. The 4 bolt holes there on the outer ports, or outer bolt holes on the manifold. It was, and I think it was just as it warmed up, it was leaking out, but then it just boiled it off quick enough, and I couldn't see it because the fan was blowing and everything else, and you just couldn't see it was leaking coolant past there. I think is what was happening. So these heads are junk. It was going to need new valves, new seats, all that stuff. I think it did have, someone mentioned, I think it was Nobody Sam or someone said that asked if it had the Stellite valves in it, which are a higher heat valve. I think it did have those in it, but it doesn't matter as these things just run so hot. So the machine shop had these heads sitting on the shelf, and he said they had been sitting there forever, and he was wanting to get rid of them. And what they were, and they're a 318 Chrysler head, exact same head as those. They already had done the machine work. They'd ground the intake seats and had new exhaust seats milled in and put in. Already had the deck milled. Exhaust was milled. Had new valve guides in it. The intake's been ran over real quick. These haven't been helicoiled, these outside ports. They were real good shaped heads. They did not have springs, valves, or anything like that in them. So they sold me the heads real cheap because they'd had them sitting on the shelf and they were wanting to move them. And then I bought a new set of valves and springs to put in it, and keepers and rotators. I got all that stuff new. I got rotators on the exhaust valves, just help with the heat. And they are the Stellite valves in it this time to make sure you get the higher heat stuff. And got all that done. And I think it turned out, and they're going to turn out real nice. and it was going to be several $100 cheaper for this option as opposed to what it was going to cost to get those heads back and going again. And so yeah, machine shop did real good on these. I was real happy with it and whatnot. If you ever need any machine work done and you're in Illinois or Indiana, go check out G&G Machine. They do really, really good work there. Never had a bad product come out of there, and anybody I've ever talked to's had good luck with them. So I'd go check out G&G Machine if you need some engine work done. So anyway, I'll come back to you here once I get the engine cleaned up and carburetor put back together, and we get ready to slap them on there. Alright, I'm going to slap this head down on here. I've kind of along with the die grinder polished up all the surfaces on here. The heads are obviously already cleaned up. New head gasket sitting on there. Took the air hose, blew all the bolt holes out, blew the pistons out, got all that cleaned up. Get ready. Make sure that surface is all clean. I took a carb cleaner and a clean paper towel and wiped down the head deck. There, get all the oil off of it. We're going to slap the cylinder head down on here. If I can get a hold of it. You don't really want to drop this thing, just an FYI. If you didn't know that though, you probably shouldn't be working on stuff. Get it up there, right? It's alright. Alright, sit down on there. I'll get my hand out of the way. Real close. I think one side's on. Maybe not. There's two holes right there by the dowel pin. There we go. You'll know it when it sits down on there nice and easy. I took Loctite and ran the two studs in, put red Loctite on there, ran the studs in all the way so that it'll seal up. Now, head bolts. Just start one of them here. Yeah, I'm starting. I forgot my oil can. I always like to oil those head bolts when I run them in. Put just a little bit of oil on the threads, help them torque down a little better. I think it was Dirt and Thunder told me that this reason this other bolts like this is because they got a oil passage that runs up through the bolt, and that's why it's tapered down like that to run oil up around that bolt. Got new good clean engine oil in here, so it don't matter if it drips in the engine. Put all those in there and get them snug, and I'll come back to you when I torque it. Alright, got the bolts torqued to 45 for the first go around. Torque them up again. I posted on the Combine group on Facebook. There was a couple guys responded on there to see what it was. Generally 318 Chrysler's what I could find on the internet. 85 to 95 foot-pounds of torque. Some sites were saying 85 if it has a steel gasket, 95 if it's a composite gasket. This is a composite gasket. But then we actually did some digging and found our original service manual for this combine, and it said 85 for the 7600. But then if you had a 70 or an 8600 gas, white 8600, you go to 95. So I don't know what the difference is. Maybe they changed to a composite gasket after they had the steel gasket originally or something. So I'm just going to 90 and split it here. And probably not going to really matter each way. Since they've been torqued down several times, I had a thought of even staying at 85 just because I'd really hate to pull the threads out of the bolt holes or something. There's 90. We'll get it torqued down here, get it close and see what it's feeling like. Yeah, it's not going to get, it won't be a problem to go to 90. So we'll just go to 90. Extension. Kind of nice, there's only 10 head bolts and you do it in a staggered pattern. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the reason you start in the middle and work out is, the theory is you start out here, the center of the head could warp up just a little bit. And this way you start in the middle, you're kind of just working the head out. There's a theory on that. Sometimes they got a staggered pattern here, sometimes you go around and around. It just depends on the manufacturer. Come on. That one didn't feel too good, but it was the oil one, so just be careful with them. When I was in diesel school, there was a kid that had, I think it was an 806. He was overhauling 806 diesel. And the motor wasn't in very good shape, but they went ahead and overhauled it, without getting a different block and stuff. He started torquing the head bolts down, and it started pulling the threads out of the head bolts. Had to go along and helicoil about 80% of them. That's a sickening feeling. But it wasn't their main tractor. They kind of just more or less a barnyard tractor. And it was Roger Fish was the one asking about the Stellite valves, if it had those in it. And go around one more time here just to make sure they're tight enough. And it was Dirt and Thunder who mentioned that is an oil passage there, that bolt. It's probably going to be a two-part series here. There's that cylinder head on. Excellent. Now I'm going to get the exhaust parts up and show you something kind of cool.